Hey everybody, welcome to Comic Conversation. I am your host, Brandon. We've got a heck of a show for you. It's Witcher oriented because of Netflix, the show, Witcher, it's out. We're celebrating, and I brought someone special to do this episode with me. She is a model. I have cosplayed alongside of her. She is also my co-host of my podcast, Belly of the Beast.
Our podcast.
It's mine! No. On our podcast. And she is also my girlfriend. She's not our girlfriend, just mine. This is the Mighty Alicia. Welcome to the show.
It's a wonderful pleasure to be here.
Awesome. I'm excited. You're someone who played The Witcher. You're someone who has joined me in reading this comic, and we are both looking forward to the Netflix series.
We both listened to it on Audible as well.
For like 2 seconds, the narrator, he's so calming with his voice.
Yo, we kept falling asleep.
He's like, yes, Geralt the Rivia? Yes, that's me.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm really excited to do this episode. Are you ready to do this episode?
Yes.
Let's do it. Because we're talking not just about comics, but we're talking something that I feel like is in the buzz right now.
Yes.
As we speak right now, Witcher is available for the viewing on Netflix.
I can't wait to see it.
And I felt like the best way to celebrate, I guess, here, or honor it here, would be by checking out The Witcher by Dark Horse Comics, written by Paul Tobin, and he's joined by a bunch of artists, because this is like a whole collection. You've got Joe Carrio on there, Peter Kowalski, Max Bertolini, a whole bunch of people. I've got a list here, and I'll include in the bio on the info everybody involved. But this is just a big package of like The Witcher, and it's not really our first taste of The Witcher.
No. And
that's part of the reason why I invited you here, because you're a big Witcher fan. So tell me about your experience with Witcher, the game, and I guess how you feel about the property.
Well, I was first introduced to Witcher by playing Witcher 3, which I really, really enjoyed. It was after that, a mini game was dropped about Gwent, which I'm obsessed with. Gwent is an amazing game. I wish I had real life Gwent decks. They should just sell physical Gwent decks. Oh, we're on YouTube. Sell physical Gwent decks. I don't just want to play it in a video game. I want to crush someone. But anyway, in person. But anyway. So, and after that, I discovered that Witcher was actually a series of books.
Right.
I think they were originally written in Russian. And they weren't here for a long time.
I think it's a Polish book.
Yes.
The author, I believe, is Polish.
So, they were written in not English. And and so it took a while for the fan base to cross over to America. And we're definitely lucky that it did, because after the success of the books, which I believe came first, and the games, which were wildly popular, Netflix was just like, we're thinking about making it a show. How do you guys feel? And the internet was just like, cast Henry Cavill. And then Henry Cavill was just like, I'm actually secretly a Witcher fan. I would love to play Geralt. And then Netflix was like, I bet. And then the internet was just like, is this real? And then it was, and I'm just so excited. And so it's wonderful to have read it in comic form, especially after playing it. We listened to it together on Audible.
See, the funny thing is, like, being someone who watches, I feel like most of the shows I watch aren't necessarily television shows or YouTube shows, and so I feel like if I'm watching Game Theory with MatPat or Wisecrack or whatever shows you like watching, hopefully you like watching our show, but when I watch shows and they have like their moment of advertising, there was a good period of time where like Audible was like the advertised. It's like, and this episode is brought to you by Audible, and I was like, all right, whatever. And I actually tried it out, and I needed a book to listen to, and I chose The Witcher. And it was interesting, like that, but that wasn't my first experience with Witcher.
It's actually really sweet why he got Audible. I was in the hospital and couldn't read my books, and so he got Audible so that I could still listen to books. Bam! Blew up your spot.
Oh, thank you very much. That's not a bad spot to blow up. I don't mind. I don't mind being known as a thoughtful boyfriend on the internet. That's okay. I'm alright with that. Yeah. Oh, my spot was blown up. Oh, but. My first experience with The Witcher was playing just the tutorial, really, of Witcher 2.
A waste.
I feel like you said Witcher 3 was like your first. You've played the other Witchers, but I feel like
I have not played the Witchers.
Oh, I thought you have.
Stuck with 3.
I feel like 3 is
It was really their masterwork. Like, why backtrack?
Well, see, I do feel that way. I feel like that's where there's the fans who've been like theirs for like part 1, part 2, part 3, and like really diehard fans that have just been there. While people like me were playing the Elder Scroll games, and I'm sure there were people who played both. But I was an Elder Scroll fan. It was only with 3 where I'm seeing that like it's ported everywhere. Like it's on the Switch now. You can get Witcher 3. Witcher's really having a moment right now. And so because I did play a little bit of 2, because I did listen to a little bit of it on Audible, I was like, well, why not just dive all in and get the comic and check it out?
I was certainly glad he did. As soon as he brought this comic into my house, I just snatched it and read through it immediately.
Yeah, you finished before I did.
I think I finished this in like 4 hours.
You really just took it, absorbed it, and me, it's just me. I'm a procrastinator, so I'm taking it day by day. But I didn't mind savoring this giant book.
I'm very greedy. I don't savor well.
No, because this is this entire collection. This is all right. This is collecting issues 1 through 5 of the Witcher comic series: House of Glass, Fox Children, Curse of Crows, and there's a one-shot called Killing Monsters. And it's got a bunch of extras from the sketchbook in there as well. So there's a lot to read here. One of the stories, which was actually I think the Crows one, that one referenced one of the missions, I believe, in game, and also one of the chapters that we get in the book series, where Geralt of Rivia, he's going up against, or he's challenged to, or not really challenged, but he's being paid a bounty to go and capture this Striga.
Well, that also featured in Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt.
Oh, that was in Witcher 3.
Your
okay.
Foltest story is
It's a famous one.
Infamous is the proper term. Yeah, so
and we haven't even begun to check out the Netflix series yet. Like, I know it's released already, so I'm wondering, like, are we gonna see
Netflix,
this?
Tonight.
Like, I'm wondering if we're gonna see that. Like, because now I feel like I've been hearing about
I don't need to see Foltest's story on Like, yo, if you've been following Richard, they really just ham.
Do you want to tell that story right now? Because it's not really, like, from the comic. And
So, inside the comic, Geralt was tasked with going to hunt down a Striga, which is, like, this super awful beast that is... They don't ever actually define what a Striga is. It's like a monster. I'm sure they explain it in book, but...
I mean, all I really got the sense from is that the Striga itself is cursed.
Yes, it's a cursed being. And so Geralt was doing that with Ciri, and so Ciri asked him, "You've taken down a Striga before. What was it like? How did you do it?" Enter the story of Foltest. So, Foltest, one of the most powerful cards you can get in the Northern Realms Gwent deck, is the king of, I forget, but the Northern Realms probably. And the deal with Foltest is that he was attracted to and started boning his royal sister. And so... everyone
It's very great Games of Thronesy.
Yes.
It's like we're jumping straight into the incest here.
And everyone was deeply grossed out by this, but none more so than some guy who was secretly in love with her. He didn't...
I think his name was like Ostrit.
Yeah. It was Ostrit. I remember him from the game. And, Ostrit wasn't even important. He was like a tax guy. But, he was in love with Foltest's sister, and so was Foltest. And so, Foltest and his sister did a lot of, unsavory things with one another's bodies. And when she got pregnant and they got married, the baby that came out was the Striga.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, the Striga was a cursed monster, started eating everyone in the castle. Foltest and wife tried stupidly to raise it. It didn't go well. Everyone started getting eaten. They started calling for witchers. The witchers kept dying. Foltest didn't want the baby to be killed because it was his child. I think Foltest's sister might have died in grief. Not sure. She doesn't factor into the story, I forget. Folks just be dying left and right. And so, he didn't want the Striga murdered, which I think was stupid, but I didn't write it. So enter Geralt, who, after some sleuthing, figures out how to return the Striga to the form of the now 14-year-old girl. And he ended up doing that, but he found Ostrit out while he was searching for ways to murder the Striga, because Ostrit came to him and offered to pay him to not kill the Striga because Ostrit enjoyed it being a Striga. And I think Ostrit might have had a hand in the original cursing of the child anyway.
Yeah. The way that I've seen it, because it, the same story is told in book, in game, and in comic, and I don't know how adaptations have changed over time or if they all keep
It's like the
similar
same story.
But Ostrit, out of jealousy, is the one who placed the curse to the child, so that what's his name? Foltest? Foltest would kind of be he himself would have to deal with the torment of having this monster live in his castle,
and so
the same way that he was tormented of watching this woman who he loved from afar be boned by her own brother.
Well, so Geralt, prone to his own brand of witcher justice, let the Striga murder Ostrit in the castle. And then he restored the child to her child form. There's a lot of holes in this story, in my opinion. The kid has not been a functioning human for 14 years. I don't see how she can go from being a person-eating monster to a young princess, but it's Foltest's problem now. And so he finished the story, and that's the story of Foltest. I'm not going to spoil the rest of the story that it was in. It was very much a story within a story, but...
Yeah, that was a story within a story.
Yeah.
But that's... You bring up Geralt's brand of justice.
Yes. Geralt is a strange witcher.
So focusing on the actual stories that are in the comic now. The very first one that we see, we come across, I guess, our first creature, our first mission, and that would be
the Grave Hag.
Well, the Grave Hag is part of that same story. It is the Bruxay.
I'm not sure we're saying that right.
I'm not sure either. Honestly, this is the first time I've come across this creature, and
I think
it's
said with a Z sound.
So like Bruze?
Something. I don't know.
It could be. X's do that. X's are weird letters.
Why don't you write into the comments? Tell us how it's really pronounced. We don't know. We're going to mangle it for the duration.
But here is this creature that when we are told about it, we find that it was the former bride of a gentleman who is currently stationary. He's currently stationary, and he's giving the story to Geralt, and explaining that his wife just watches him. His now dead, wife still haunts him, watches him, says nothing, and he himself has just been there because he can't bear to leave. And as the story is told to Geralt, Geralt becomes suspicious about the man, his wife, and how she came to be the creature she is.
Well, the suspicious glasswork art in the place also added a nice layer to Geralt's questions.
Well, that's something they reach. They because they meet on land, and as they travel together, seemingly as friends, Geralt's finding more information, and
with the help of a helpful succubus who just so happened to want to sleep with him.
there's as you mentioned the grave hag already, and there's I think Lichen. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Lishen.
And
the Lishen is a forest spirit. You played through Witcher 3, you know you need a lot of Axie. Burn that fool.
Well, so
Igni, excuse me.
So we see these creatures in the woods, and the only real sanctuary is this glass house. The glass house is not just transparent, and it's not just window panes.
I thought that was suspicious. You got a glass house in the middle of a forest full of bogeymen. Why did Lishen haven't destroyed the glass house yet? Whatever.
And the glass itself is like stained glass, like in a church, each telling maybe pieces of stories. And you mentioned the succubus inside.
Yeah, there was definitely a helpful succubus who thought Geralt was hot.
A lot of people think Geralt is hot.
I was about to say, in every single major arc in The Witcher, there is a lady who thinks that Geralt is all that in a bag of snowy-haired chips. And so they fall upon him, smooshing and rubbing at his body. And we get to see those sex scenes in Witcher 3 because it's awesome.
I mean, the book itself features a lot more sex than... I don't know if I want to say that I didn't expect the sex. But I don't know. Maybe I'm not reading enough Marvel Max or DC Black Label. But I don't always expect to see
like
boobies.
Sex scenes.
There's boobies out.
So many boobies. There was not one penis. I'm mad about that.
Well, there's no vagina there either. Everybody.
Not true. When we saw the fox mother, she was fully naked.
I'm sure things were covered. We weren't getting.
They weren't. You can flip to the page now if you like. Don't. It'll take
No.
But she was nude. I saw it. You saw it. We saw it.
She's absolutely nude. I'm just saying.
We don't get to know what Geralt's beef looks like. I think that's rude.
I'm just saying that we saw a fox lady. We didn't see beaver. All right. It wasn't. It wasn't just fully on display.
I think we just saw a whole forest of animals.
Can we finish the first story arc first? So,
fine.
So we get into the glass house. We do meet a succubus. We do meet this stranger's wife who explains her background, and we learn that the stranger is responsible for how this undead woman came to be. This seems to be a ongoing trope in each of the stories.
Yes, I really like it.
Is that something that you find happens in the video game as well? What does it say about people?
It's not. In the game, there are so many side quests, it's less of a factor. But in the major quests of the game, a lot of times a recurring theme, you see it even more highlight in the comics, is that the monsters are almost innocent. They destroy things because they're monsters. They're almost like animals. People are the bad guys. Like, when we had Osric create the Striga in order to murder a bunch of people because he was jealous, Osric is the bad guy. Like, yes, the Striga's murdering people, but the Striga's a mindless child. The Striga's a child. Like, the Striga was literally a baby and aged 14 years of life just trying to eat. Like, yes, it was horrible, and no, you shouldn't be in the castle with it, but the guy to blame for all the deaths is Osric, not the Striga. Like,
right.
And that's a recurring theme.
That's one of the recurring things that we see in here. I also feel like there's a lot of I don't want to say child abuse. I'll say child abuse, but that seems to be the story doesn't. The comic itself doesn't so much focus on child abuse as much as acknowledge it's a thing that exists. It's a thing that happens often, and it almost feels that adults are. It almost feels like watching an episode of House, where if they're an adult, people lie. Like, I felt like I heard that like every third episode of House. It's like people lie,
that's
everyone lies,
phrase.
And so
House was the biggest liar. But.
And so that's kind of what I got from here. Like, the only people that I got any real honesty from maybe might have been the children. Like, they were always the victims.
Except for that one child in Witcher 3 who was the very last Gwent champion. That child was not a victim. That child could get their ass beat.
But, example, the Bruzza. I'm going to try and change the pronunciation there. But she's someone who, when she was married to her husband...
Didn't love him.
But she was married off at, as a teenager to this adult male. And that's not the story that he told Geralt, but that's the truth.
The story that she told Geralt when they finally met up.
Now, Geralt himself has, I guess, an arrangement or just, I guess, part of their culture where they don't kill people. They only kill beasts. Can you give me more information on that?
They didn't really go into it a whole lot in the game, and I certainly killed a couple people. Like, you mess with the Witcher, you get the steel sword. Witcher's jobs are to take care of the supernatural beasts that are roaming the world. Like, their world is not free of magical beasts. You have police to police the people. You have the chantry to brainwash the people. And when it comes time to deal with magic, you have magicians and witches like Yennefer. But when it comes time to deal with the monsters, you got witchers and their silver swords. Like, witches are monster police. They come in, they fuck shit up, they leave.
Alright.
That's it. They only do it for pay. If you're not trying to pay, which is not about to be there, that's it.
Alright. And see, the thing is, I feel like as we go through the book, we get pieces and pieces of, I guess, the lore of the Witcher, his people. We know he's not the only one.
We also know he's a strange Witcher.
You've already mentioned Ciri.
Ciri is his daughter, who he loves. His daughter with Yennefer.
And we do meet Yennefer later on in the book. She's referenced earlier in the book.
Yennefer takes no tea for the fever. She don't even care.
But in this same story arc, and we're going to move on to the next story arc soon, but in the same story arc, you mentioned him and his relations with the succubus.
Yennefer don't even care.
But Geralt himself, he doesn't. I don't know. Witchers and romance. That's an odd thing.
Witchers traditionally do not feel emotions, the more tender emotions. The lore behind that is when they undergo the trial to get their Witcher locket and develop their Witcher powers, it's sucked out of them during the procedure. It's like, I don't know, it's like a mental thing that happens. They develop their powers and all of a sudden it's just like, fuck bitches, get money. Literally, yeah, they don't, a lot of them don't have more tender emotions. And Geralt does. And I personally think he would be loyal and faithful to Yennefer if she bothered to stick around. The problem in their relationship doesn't seem to be originating from Geralt. Like, Yennefer dips on him with a regularity that is astonishing. Like, one scene in the comic was really funny to me because, like, Geralt was about to do it with two ladies. They were feeling him, he was feeling them, everybody was splashing around in the bubble bath, it was looking sexy, and Yennefer just appears, and it's just like, oh, I see you got some hoes right now. Let us go collect our daughter. Call me when you're finished. Send your hoes out. I gotta talk to you for a second. And Geralt is like, can I talk to you for a second? And she's just like, you may not.
See, now, there may have been some, I don't know how exactly I would even phrase this. Like, the romance doesn't seem to be something that The Witcher's without. Or should I say Geralt is without. There seems to be some understanding or, you know, maybe he wouldn't define it as love. Or maybe what he considers love isn't... Well, but I'm not even talking about Yennefer. Like, I'm talking about first story that with the succubus. We have, as we near the end of the story, Witcher offers to kind of, not really ride off in the sunset, but ride off, I guess, in the moonlight with the succubus. Because this glass house is a house for the cursed. But in an almost philosophical way, I guess he looks at her and says, you know, you're not the cursed one, or you're only as cursed as you allow yourself to be.
Yeah.
You can leave this house anytime you want with me. It's really just made of glass. In the end of the day, it's made. You could walk out this door. And she chooses not to. And I'm sure he lives his life just fine in his Witcher way, but there does seem to be a bit of a romantic to him.
Yeah, Geralt is definitely a romantic Witcher. And that's also just a factor and facet of the stories that they tell around Geralt. Like, women come into his life and they sort of blow in and out like tumbleweeds through a desert. Like, it's always temporary. His one true love is Yennefer.
Okay. So see, and now it's funny because there's, looking at this is a fantasy novel. As the Netflix series was released, I remember, or before it was released, I should say, and listening to the creators and hearing how they described what our expectations would be. It was pretty much being told to us, the audience, not to expect too much high fantasy and look forward to seeing more horror. And if
there's a lot of monsters in the series, I could see why they would focus on that.
No, but when I go and I look at this and I see the dark artwork, the monsters that you mentioned, it's very grotesque. I compare it to the Theater of the Grotesque, where they're not shying away from the ugly of the world.
No.
And they're not shying away from the creatures, and I think we also get a taste of that in the Brand of Justice that we see, because this very first arc kind of concludes with the Witcher may not kill humans, or Geralt may not. Actually, yeah, it's a Witcher code. So they
Geralt frequently finds loopholes around that. He doesn't kill people, but he's not above letting monsters murder you and not doing anything about it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the first thing we see there. It's something that we like as far as like fantasy goes. It doesn't feel like Lord of the Rings. Like, Lord of the Rings could have its...
I don't know, the Nazgul were pretty dark.
Honestly, when I watched Lord of the Rings, like, not to say that it was pretty... or that they were shying away from things, but it's very much not a rated R, like...
No.
Like this is even for them, even though there were plenty of dark themes and scary monsters and horrible moments, I didn't feel that kind of Dungeons and Dragons inspired fantasy. And this was very much a horror book, and what we see happen to the people, or it's graphic in its nature. When you first played the game, was that something that, did it come across to you that way in the game as well? And how did that compare, playing the game versus reading the comic?
That's kind of tough. The game read to me very much as a high fantasy. Horrible things happened, and there were horrible monsters, but it didn't feel like a walk through a horror video game. The graphics were very light and bright colored, actually. The landscapes were eye-popping and quite beautiful. Like, if you were descending into a cave, that was dark. There was certain missions that took place at night. Like, I remember there was a Striga mission. It was at night. It was hard. There's also a mission with, I forget what they're called, but they're witch monsters who float around and throw corruption at you and also poison. And that was tough and also scary. A lot of things take place in caves, but once you're in the actual world, it's pretty actually. Like, there are things that are frightening. Like, it's open world, so there's a lot to discover. And I once stumbled into, like, a dragon den. And it was just, now it's me and this dragon fighting it out. It was scary. But the landscape was really nice. Like, I didn't feel like it was like a horror thing going on. It was, damn, a dragon.
No, but a lot of these RPGs have like their underground dungeons that you're going through. But like you said, the color palette is very different from...
Like, I would say God of War was a darker game.
Right.
Actually, than Witcher. Like, the color palette was a lot more gray and blue. There was a lot more darkness in the plot line. What else? I would also say Twilight Princess was a darker game than Witcher 3.
Really? Okay.
By a lot. The stuff going on in Twilight Princess, it was like... the whole game was physically very dark, but I'm not here to talk about that right now.
No.
Witcher, playing through Witcher is not a walk through a horror game. Like, it doesn't translate that way.
So we made through House of Glass. Let's talk about Fox Children for a second.
I liked both House of Glass and Fox Children. I decided around the time I was reading Fox Children that there was a recurring theme of, like, wronged women getting revenge. Like, I felt like there was...
You knew exactly where I was going.
I feel like there was a lot of sexism in the book. And what would happen is the sexism would take place, and then inevitably the women would get their revenge. Usually, and I felt like that was a very poignant metaphor. Like, guys would do sexist things, and it would harm the women around them, usually transforming them into monsters. But in their transformation, yes, they were hurt, but they also became way more powerful than the men who had ruined their lives. And so in each instance, they would claim their revenge, and Geralt would help. Mm-hmm. Like, that's why you just love Geralt. Like, there's no not loving him. He's just this grouchy guy who helps wronged women sometimes. Like, okay.
The women do seem to get their share of revenge. Geralt does help.
In every story.
And once again, we found, like I brought up the lying trope. This one begins with Geralt talking to a dwarf, a trumpet-playing lover of women, music, and wine.
The dwarves are always
who he was short and stout and felt sexy and loved his body. He's a man of the people. But we see women wronged in many ways in this comic because we're introduced to a couple people. We learn that they've come across this fox demon and they want to avoid it. And so they need to have Geralt there to, help the ship crew out by avoiding it. Except they actually have one on the ship.
They kidnapped the fox demon's baby and are being followed by an angry mother who wants her child back. Was the real story.
Yeah, so that's two women already. And
they lied to Geralt, who never would have taken the job.
And then among the crew, she's not necessarily part of the crew, but she's already previously on the boat. I'm not sure exactly what her intention. She might have just been seeking transport. But there is another woman there who we learn is an elf. And
yeah, she was hiding her elvenness.
And yeah, she was hiding her elvenness, and so it was less that she was hiding a woman, which honestly, because I've seen so much, like, I guess sexism in the book already, I was surprised just to see a woman on the ship. But it's like, oh, they
aren't women supposed to be bad luck on ships?
Yeah, that's at least the pirate code. That's the way that I've heard it, but this is different lore, so you know they let her on. It's a transport ship, so women got to go places. But she didn't let everyone know she was an elf, and we got little hints. She was a pretty good archer at one point. We got a very quick, brief spot.
That is racist. Not all elves are good archers.
I don't know.
Bam.
I don't know about that. Look. If I've offended any elves out there, my bad. But that's
all
just...
elves matter.
Dark elves, wood elves, but
light elves and dark.
Yeah, it's so this is a woman who felt the need to hide her species while there are already 2 other women wronged, and this is now an ongoing thing. You know, I've mentioned the lying trope. Now we have the wronged women trope.
Yep.
And you're right that they become stronger, but do you feel that there is a statement being made as far as not necessarily that women are victims, but do you gain more power after being a victim? Like, I'm not sure if a message is being sent, or is the message simply men are trash, #men are trash, and
I think there's a definite element of the idea that women become more powerful once they are ruined in some way by men. And that's part of what I mean when I say that it's a sexist story. Because you can get a lot of what is going on in the writer's mind by reading through what they've written. And even as they are allowing the women to triumph, it's only because something terrible's happened. It's just like in Game of Thrones. Sansa only became useful after she was raped by Ramsay. Why did it take that for you to grow a brain, Sansa? Weird. Mm-hmm. Weird. Written by men. Obvious. Cliched and annoying. But, I suppose this is why we need more comics written by women, because certain things we're just tired of seeing, and I don't like, writers can do better, but they're not. So it's like yes, I do feel like that's in there. It's a problematic trope. I think they could have told a lot of the stories without that particular trope in it. Like, do think it's there.
In fairness, I don't think the Fox Demons necessarily count as those examples that we're given. The Fox Demons are always women. There are no male version of this Fox Demon.
And in their defense, they were very powerful, and Geralt was worried about them before they ever showed up.
And they have their powers and abilities that have nothing to do with being victims. They are just that species. But they are older than... they are like among the oldest species on Earth, but there are less of them, very much like there are less Witchers now.
But that's another trope surrounding women that I don't think is entirely healthy. The Foxes are only women. There are no men to mess them up or ruin it in any way. So that's its own trope that you see recurrent through literature. Women made powerful by the absence of men. Women made powerful by the dominion of men. Women made powerful by being ruined by men. It's still power as framed by a woman's proximity to a man. Get rid of that. Just make powerful women. That's it.
Cool. So, speaking of powerful women, we don't see her in this storyline, but we do eventually get to see Ciri. We do get to see Yennefer. They arrive in the later story with the crows. In this story, I want to wrap this one up, and then we can move on. But in this one, it's once again a story of lying, but not everyone necessarily... We get to see where exactly, I guess...
wasn't Yen the liar in this story?
Well, Yen wasn't even in this one yet. But we're coming across I guess, where exactly Geralt draws the lines of who he's willing to let kill and be killed and who lives. Because as he's on this ship, the ship dwindles down. Like, I do believe the captain of the ship lives, but the leader of the crew, the one who designed the mission in the first place, doesn't make it. You know, the one who owns the boat, who is not the captain, he's just the owner of the boat. The supplier of the vehicle is not the captain. But he gets to live, whereas...
Which I thought was surprising. He sounded a lot like those Nazi scientists. I'm just doing my job.
Well, see, that's the thing.
I just own the boat.
Well, that's the thing. He almost died because at some point he was being fooled by an illusion, but Witcher went out of his way to be like, yo, you fool, don't hop over this. This is a lie. This is an illusion.
Don't go into the water. There's obviously a grave hag in there.
You know, so Witcher has decided that he is the judge at this point, and he sees that there's enough innocence in this man to let him survive, whereas someone else is going to, like the one who seemingly attacked the kidnapped fox demon. He does not get to live.
Why would he? Like,
I'm not saying he should, but we're seeing the limits. Like, even you said you were surprised to see the owner of the ship manage to survive.
I didn't think he was gonna get out alive. And if we'd been playing it in the game, I wouldn't have had any mercy on the ship owner. The ship owner would have definitely went to the dogs. Another thing that shocked me about the comic, actually, in comparison to the game, some of the monsters talk in the comic, and they did not in game. Like, the things that the grave hags care about and say add a whole new dimension of creepiness to their stuff. And they were weird and
kiss sailor shiny things.
Yo, the grave hags are trying to be. It's stressful. It's like, yo, no, nobody wants this. They don't. You don't even have to be a man.
There's someone out there for everybody.
You don't even have to be a man. They will drag you down, and you could be a woman, and they'll be like, kiss, kiss, come here, girl. At least they don't discriminate along gender lines. A positive note for the grave hags. That's right.
But this was another example of saying we see liars, we see Witcher justice, Geralt's justice specifically. I feel like we get more of that and more of an explanation of what he is allowed to do, or versus what he wants to do. And I believe it was Monster. It was where are you at? It was Killing Monsters. That was the one shot where we are in a town that is overrun by, I guess, imperial rule, and we are constantly being told, or Geralt's constantly being told, to ignore the atrocities that we see man doing. This is just the price of war.
Yes, that was a flashback into Geralt's past when he was but a young witcher.
And so we take this look at him, and this is another one where I say grotesque, because a lot of what we see, the nastiness we see, doesn't come from the monsters, but comes from people. And once again, where there's justice, where Geralt is, I think sometimes there's an expectation because it's The Witcher and it's dark lighting, and you see Henry Cavil, in there, just, he's not quite a monster. There's some monstrous looks. You look in The Witcher's eyes, those demonic eyes, his white hair.
The sexy golden eyes that only men are scared of.
And
no woman is put off by Geralt's eyes. No woman. None.
But those are the demonic eyes that, it tell that he's a witcher. And everyone knows what a witcher is. There's not a lot of them, but everyone knows what a witcher is.
Oh, the ladies think those demonic eyes are sexy.
Oh yeah, I think it's more than just the eyes. If it was the eyes, and then they look like Rockstride
muscles.
If it was Rockstride walking around with those eyes, nobody'd be walking around.
I love Rockstride, and I do think you encounter him in the games. Rockstride is a giant troll who is a recurring character in the Witcher series. Rockstride really just wants his wife to stop yelling at him, and he's willing to do whatever it takes
And that's a good man. He tries his best.
He tries.
Yeah.
He's not trying to kidnap this random woman. He's trying to bring a songbird to his wife.
But I think when you look at getting back to Geralt, and you know when you see artwork of Geralt, and you see this almost like vampire-like look to him,
and like a vampire, he frequently draws women.
And it's quite charming, But when you get that look, this dark, shadowy figure, I think there's almost an expectation of who can I compare it to? I almost get like a Batman vibe before you know anything about him, or like Wolverine, that he's just gonna be like this gruff, badass, but he's actually a really nice guy. Like, unlike superheroes,
he is gruff, but he's sweet.
And unlike Geralt, there's no alter ego. There's no sometimes
just Geralt.
It's just Geralt, and so, like at one point in this one shot, he stumbles into a town. He stumbles into a bar. One guy's really just annoyed with him for seemingly no reason. I don't even think he bumped into him.
No, there's racism in The Witcher. Geralt being of Rivia is a huge issue.
Oh no, but there's
no one likes Rivians for some reason.
No, but this wasn't just a Rivian thing. This was just the explanation that was given, and we see this interaction is like, he's like, hey, watch where you're going. Who do you think you are? You think just because we're townsfolk, you can run roughshod on us? And he tries to start a fight. And Geralt's just like, so I don't really want to fight, but it looks like you're picking one. So we can skip the talking, and if you want to fight, we can.
I could just beat you.
It's a very quick fight, and it's not even particularly bloody. Geralt goes and helps the gentleman up and says, hey, you're actually much faster than I expected. You almost got me. How about I get you a drink? And he was really cool about it.
A lot of that happened in the video games. There were brawls. And what would happen in game is that it's funny because Geralt is not trying to kill these people. He just wants to be left alone. In game, when people would pick fights with you like that, and there were a couple, people would form a ring around you. Geralt would take off both of his swords and his shirt. He would agree not to use any spells. And he would close fist beat the dude into the ground, is what would happen. And then the guy was either salty afterwards or not.
And we get a taste of that. But the reason why I bring that gentleman up is because we see this guy who he has a fight with. Geralt's like, you know what? I get it. Your town is going through something. You're on the edge. We can let bygones be bygones. It is what it is. However, when we look at the law of the land, we look at some of the imperial soldiers who kind of run roughshod over this town, he's less forgiving in that part. He does not like seeing power abused. And
I wonder if that's because he's a witcher and he has so much power. Because, like, Axie is a crazy spell, actually. He can sort of brainwash people into doing what he wants and low-key control animals. And he just doesn't bother with that, mostly. It's weird. If I could mind meld people into doing what I wanted, I'm a teacher. Do you know how often I'd mind meld my entire class into shutting up? Every day. Every day. I would just be like, quiet. It would be wonderful.
So we see this. Oh my goodness. You're fantasizing about quiet children. And that sort of thing doesn't exist. Not even the book. We see children and they're all loud.
Huh?
But in this town, and this one happens over the course of one issue. He's in this town. He's trying to get information of murders seemingly caused by a fiend. Already, just like in all the other stories, something's wrong about this tale.
Right, Geralt never thought it was a fiend.
Yeah,
he's just like,
people don't die the way, people are saying that we're seeing stabbings.
Fiends don't stab you. Fiends have claws. They just rip you apart. Like, there's no need to stab you if you're a fiend.
Yeah, so it's we're seeing where this line is drawn, and this is the first time in the book series, in the comic book series, where like Ciri hasn't even been introduced yet. So we're seeing him with his, I guess, her first Witcher companion.
And Ciri in game is incredibly dope. She can secretly like leap through time. Like Ciri is actually more dope than Geralt. It was my hope that Witcher 4 would have dropped by now, and it would be a game centering on Ciri as the lead. Like, her power set was nuts.
Well, a lot of people thought and were disappointed that when Cyberpunk, they thought that it was going to be Ciri focused in the future. And they were very disappointed when it wasn't. Hey, but you get Keanu Reeves. She doesn't like anything popular. Keanu Reeves, Baby Yoda, it's not her cup of tea. Don't hit the dislike button. But we do see Geralt and his Witcher companion, and it feels like constantly Geralt's being told, it's not our way to interfere with the people. It's not our way to interfere.
Okay,
You're
wait.
gonna interfere
When you say
with
Witcher companion, do you mean Ciri or do you mean, I think his name is Vesemir?
Vesemir. That's who I'm talking
Vesemir
about. I
is
forgot
like,
his name, and I'm so grateful you finally said it. Like, I'm trying to, please say it for me.
Vesemir is like Geralt's Witcher dad.
Witcher dad!
Is how I felt about Vesemir. Like, Vesemir, you only see Vesemir, I think Vesemir might have died, I'm not sure. You only see Vesemir in flashbacks of Geralt's past. Like, Vesemir is the guy who helped take down the first dragon in Witcher 3. We're traveling with Vesemir as he was searching for Yennefer. Vesemir taught him the ways of the Witcher. He trained under Vesemir. Vesemir is that guy.
Cool. And that guy is traveling with him in this story. And it seems to be coaching him as far as don't get involved. But there's
Which
only
means
so
he
much
was a young Witcher.
But there's only so much you can do, I feel like. There's, at least in Geralt's case, because money seems like a limited thing. They only really just hunt monsters for money. And that's pretty much their existence. You don't just see Witchers among town folks just chilling. Unless they're in the bathhouse.
And it's Geralt's interactions with Vesemir that really show us that Geralt is not your average Witcher. Mm-hmm. Like, he has a code of justice. Like, the way Vesemir describes Witchers, they're like these impartial arbiters of monster justice only. Like, if you can pay them, they will mercenary style take out whatever monster that they have the ability to take out. Sometimes they're very much like mercenaries. Sometimes a Witcher, you'll give a Witcher a job, the Witcher will know it's a BS job. You don't know that. The Witcher will take your money and trick you. Geralt is also not like that. If Geralt is going to accept your pay, Geralt's killing a monster or solving your issue. Like in the case of the Striga, he didn't kill the monster, but he solved the issue. He took the money, and that was that. Like, other Witchers do other things. Geralt is not that dude.
That he's not. And just like, and it may sound like repetition, but I'm always interested in, I guess, seeing how he gets the job done. Because once again, we see a person that Geralt has judged and found unworthy of living. And he uses this captain of the Imperial, I guess, officers as a bait, so to speak, for the Fiend. And it was crazy watching this happen because the Fiend is fast, and you would think sometimes that maybe Geralt might benefit from at least keeping them around a little longer, because it might be helpful to have an extra soldier there watching your back.
No.
But he doesn't seem to mind if it makes the mission more difficult, as long as we get rid of you. The world could do without you.
I don't even really believe that. witchers carry silver swords for a reason. The monsters, a lot of them need to be put down with pure silver. Having a regular soldier there, not helpful. Okay. Your metal does nothing. That's why you call the witcher. That's why they carry two swords. The steel sword is for beasts and for non-magic entities. The silver sword is for stuff like werewolves and grave hags and like those witchy monsters who trap you in bogs and throw magic spells at you.
I'm learning. So this is new information.
The silver sword is a big deal. Like,
dope.
Yeah.
Our last story that we see,
the one that contains the story about Voltus.
Yes, but this one's not about Voltus as much, but it does begin with them looking for another Striga.
Ciri wants to take down the Striga to prove that she's witcher enough to be left alone by her overprotective parents.
Is that what this is?
Baby! Yes! Yennefer showed up and interrupted Geralt's bath with his hose because she wanted to tell him, you should not be hunting a Striga with my daughter. Don't be an idiot. Change this mission. Geralt was like, I think she can handle it. Yennefer appears in person the next day and is like, there's a much more important mission in the opposite direction of the Striga. You should go that way. And it pays more. Geralt is like, pays more? That's where we're going. Ciri is just like, F you, I can take down the Striga. How exactly did you do this, Dad? And then she listens to the story about Geralt and Foltest, and then she hairs off to go take care of the Striga on her own. This is a story about a young girl who is trying to show her overprotective and powerful parents that she too is powerful.
And do you feel, because I felt like, I don't necessarily feel like you were trying to attack the author. When you were talking about...
No, author don't feel that way. I still like you.
When you talk about tropes, though, when it comes to how women are treated or how they're portrayed or where their strength comes from. But Ciri is someone who is not victim, not demon, do you feel that she was handled in a way that was respectful and...
It's more respectful, and I do like Ciri as a character, but we also have to understand that Ciri behaves like a man a lot of the time, and that's part of why Yennefer is annoyed with her behavior. She's been around Geralt too long. Yennefer is just like, why is our daughter brawling in the bar right now? Can you fix it? And Geralt is just like, they shouldn't have tried to touch her butt. I mean, we should leave Ciri alone.
I think one of my favorite lines, because you mentioned him being dad. We don't often, I guess, get to see single dads portrayed in, certain medias. Like, this is a new portrayal of single dad to me.
Yeah.
And we see Yennefer at some point in this bar with a girl and say, I think I'm allowed to see my daughter. Like, you've seen her enough. I think I got visitation rights.
Meanwhile, it was Yennefer who blew out of town like a cloud in the front of a storm. But okay, sis, you're definitely allowed to see your daughter whenever you want, which is not that often, but we're not going to talk about that, Yennefer.
Is Geralt a good dad?
That I don't know. There seems to be, from game, I haven't read the books, I would like to. If you want to send us a copy, let us know in the comments. So, in game, there was a huge swath of time where Geralt was training Ciri as a little girl. And then there seemed to be a long gap of time in which Ciri was separate from Geralt and being trained elsewhere. Then they reunited when Ciri was pretty much grown, and they started going on, like, adventures together in much the same way Vesemir tutored Geralt. Geralt began tutoring Ciri. So they would go out together after she'd been trained and after she'd undergone the Witcher ceremony, and I got the feeling that he was letting her get her toes wet in the actual solving of the monster problems. But the issue is, Ciri's got, at least the issue in game, was that Ciri has this crazy wild magic and people wanted to kidnap her for reasons associated with her magic. But Ciri is also Geralt's daughter, and I mean, in her opinion, if you want to kidnap her, come with it. She will deliver a fist to your face. That didn't make Geralt super happy. Because he's just like, I mean, yes, Ciri can take care of herself, but Ciri is also likely to make herself into a target in order to draw a fight.
Right.
Like, Ciri is hot-headed. Ciri is very much like a brash young dude.
She seems a lot cooler than Geralt does.
Ciri is way cooler than Geralt. That is true.
And that seems to be something where I don't want to say Geralt is necessarily hot-headed, but definitely a little stubborn. Where
Geralt is stubborn. That is one of his character traits.
And that's something where Ciri seems to define that very much as that's the man's weakness.
That's just dad. Whatever.
Yeah, and it's just so interesting seeing children in this book. Not, whether...
Now, Ciri's not a child in the book.
No, but it's still his child.
Yeah.
And I just think it's interesting seeing children, parents, and their children, because in this very comic that Ciri is introduced, she's... Yennefer and Ciri are mentioned, but we don't actually see her until this particular storyline. The storyline that she's brought in, we also see the original hiring for the Striga. There's a woman who also wants Geralt and Ciri to kind of look after her son, who might know something. Her dumb son, who has feathers and turns into a crow.
Yes, because the business with the Fiend and the business with the Striga were happening simultaneously. I believe the Fiend is how Yennefer was trying to distract Geralt from the Striga.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Yennefer was like, there's a Fiend over there that pays more. Why don't you ignore the Striga for a while? And I really love the strong character decisions. Like, Ciri is hot-headed. Geralt is stubborn. Yennefer is manipulative. Like,
so they all messed up.
Yes. Yes. Like, and again, this is why I stress communication as one of the pillars of our relationship, because I keep seeing a recurring theme of things going wrong because everyone is failing to communicate. Yennefer straight up lied to everybody. Yennefer manipulated the whole business. Yennefer showed up, decided Ciri had no business fighting with Striga, that Geralt was being a fool with the life of her daughter, and she wasn't doing that. Yennefer views herself as in control of the situation that is Geralt and Ciri. So, Yennefer made an elective decision that this wasn't gonna happen. Geralt had no idea about that decision. Geralt was planning to gently guide Ciri into murdering the Striga together. Ciri wanted her own glory and to be her own woman. She kind of didn't want Dad's help.
Yeah.
Geralt didn't get that either. And if he'd known, he wouldn't have agreed. Like, a Striga's a BFD. Ciri's inexperienced, very powerful, possibly more powerful than Geralt, but deeply inexperienced. Geralt knows this. He would have insisted on going. Ciri didn't want that. It's annoying. Just the lack of communication. Everyone should be listening to each other more and hearing each other's valid concerns and acting on those things.
Yes. You seem so sure, like, after you make these statements, like, I have spoken. It's like, this is the way.
It is.
Yeah.
I know the way.
Having read all this, is this a book you'd like to continue reading? Because this is only volume 1.
Well, there's no more of it.
More. Well, I do believe more is being produced in just issues, like single issue comics.
But where are we getting the next one?
Because this is volume 1. So when I see volume 1, I assume there'll be a volume 2.
We can cop volumes 2 through however many they create. I'm down with reading more of this.
Did you
enjoy The Witcher World. Yes. I also thought that the art in this particular comic was of very high quality. Can we show some of the art?
Well, we're gonna put it up on the screen and maybe get some other stuff. We're definitely gonna look at the art. No, but I think what was great in the volume, though, is that there was a sketchbook inside. I'm not being paid by Dark Horse. There are no in-advertisement.
If you want to pay us, that's okay. Let us know in the comments.
We don't even have a Patreon yet. But
if you really want us, you can figure out how to pay.
But
I know you can.
But I have no problem recommending this comic because I enjoyed it. And in this oversized volume, you get some extras in here that you may not get in the individual issues. So hey, check it out. Also, before we wrap this up, is there anything that you have expectations for in the Netflix series that you're looking forward to? And once we're done with the series, will you come back and can we talk about the Netflix series together?
Of course, I'd be willing to come back to Comic Conversations. So,
conversation, no S.
Conversation.
Yes, we will have a conversation
about comics. So, my sister is watching it, and one thing she did reveal that I think would be helpful to me as a new watcher, and helpful to anybody who's thinking about tuning in. Apparently, the Netflix series shifts back and forth between the past and the present, and they do a bad job of showing that shift. So, when you're watching the show, if you're like us and we're about to jump in like later tonight or maybe tomorrow, sometime over this upcoming weekend, if you're new to the series and you're hearing all the hype that's surrounding it and you're just like, well, maybe I'll watch it. You should know that it's doing a time skip thing, and that's why it's confusing. Bear with it. Stick through it. Enjoy the show. A note to Netflix. Come on with your exposition.
I don't think Netflix itself is responsible for
whoever is responsible. Do a little better with letting us know when you're in the past and when you're in the future. In Zelda games, they have an icon in the upper left corner for that.
See, now I had heard some mixed reviews, like people who absolutely love it, and I've seen others that just like a low score. I'm not going to shout out websites that what their scores were, but I thought I did think that it was interesting, and now my fear is I was not a big fan of the series Arrow. I'm paying attention to it right now because they have the...
Oh, I hope they don't Arrow it.
They have the DC Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline going on with the whole CW superhero thing. But Arrow was like constantly jumping to the past and, then coming back to the present. And I felt like that narrative was not my favorite thing. I'm not a big Arrow fan. So I'm hoping it does at least come across a lot better. Haven't checked it out yet. I'm excited. The trailers got me. I hear wonderful things about fight choreography and Henry Cavil, so I'm going to check it out.
I am excited about looking at the beautiful face of darling Henry.
No CGI in the chin.
No CGI in the chin. That's just what his chin looks like.
No. If you saw Justice League, his chin would look completely different. They ruined his chin. But we're about to wrap things up. So, thank you for watching. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Comic Convo. That's COMICONVO. See us on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lewis or Brandon. You can like, share, subscribe. Let's keep the conversation going. This is a to be seen production. Go ahead and follow us. Subscribe. Hit the subscribe button and share with your friends. Don't you want to keep the conversation going?
You can follow me at Valkyrie2200 on Instagram. You may not have my Facebook. We are not friends.
But we are not friends.
I am also a model, and you can feel free to ask me to model in some of your projects. You may do this on Instagram or via email. You can ask me for that on Instagram.
You don't ask her to model at all. You stay out of her inbox. So, Alicia, thank you for joining us at Comic Conversation. And, we'll see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we'll see you on the next one.